Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do my May and Asian Readathon wrap-up. I did that 3 times because I kept thinking it was April, but no, it was in fact May. So anyway, this past month, the month of May, not April, I read 9 books. I didn't particularly think it was a great reading month despite having read that volume of books because I felt like there were a lot of 3 and 3.5 star books, and I even read a 2.5 star book this past month. So the quality of books I've been reading has not been the greatest. Hopefully June is better. I ended up finishing 3 out of 5 of the Asian Readathon challenges, but I did read 4 books by Asian authors. So there's that. If you're ever wondering what my star ratings mean, I did do a video about that about a year ago, and it's linked down below in every wrap-up video I do and any video where I rate books. I link that video, so if you're ever curious, it's in the description box. And also in the description box for every wrap-up I do is a list of the books that I will talk about and timestamps that will lead you directly to the part of the video where I talk about it. So if you're ever annoyed with me or anything, or you just want to hear me talk about certain books, then feel free to go in the description box and find the timestamp for that book and skip forward. It won't hurt my feelings. I just appreciate you caring about my feelings about any book. So there's that. Some fun things I did in May. It was really only one fun thing, and I've already talked about it in my April wrap-up actually, but I went to Turks and Caicos, but the trip was mostly in May, so it belongs in this wrap-up. But anyway, I did put together a vlog, which is really a montage of clips and pictures that I took while I was in Turks and Caicos. It's not that long, so if you're interested, it will be linked down below and somewhere on the screen. So the first book that I read in the month of May was The Power by Naomi Alderman. Speaking of Turks and Caicos, this was the book that I read while I was on that trip. I don't know if that was the best decision, but I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. It takes place in the near future in something like an alternate timeline where girls and women start to get these electrical powers, which in turn make them the stronger sex. And it talks about how the power dynamics change because of that. We follow 4 characters, 1 male and 3 female, from around the world as they witness and are part of the changes that happen in the world. This book has a trigger warning for rape and murder and like sexual assault, and like rape I feel like encompasses that, but just want to put that out there. There's a couple of rape scenes, but there's one that's particularly graphic towards the middle end of the book. Like I said, I enjoyed reading this. It took a bit for me to get engaged with the story, but once I was hooked, I was in. Overall, this book gave me a lot to think about, which I think is the point, for obvious reasons, since it does talk about gender power dynamics and such. For the characters, I did think they were hit or miss. Like I mentioned, we follow 4 characters, and 2 of them I really thought were well-rounded. We followed them over like 10 years, I think. So we see them like grow and change and stuff, and 2 of them you really get to know, and 2 of them you're kind of like, why are they here a little bit. Speaking of the characters, one of the characters is described as mixed race, and I can't believe no one has pointed this out, but it was very odd, her description, because she is only described as mixed race, and there's no description of what races she's mixed with or anything, or even really what she looks like at all. It just felt odd to me that they were trying to do that, because the male character was black from Nigeria, and then the other 2 female characters were white. So I felt like that was put in there for diversity's sake of some kind, but you can't just label a character mixed race and then say that's diversity, you know? It doesn't really help us with a description of her. It doesn't really describe what she looks like, especially because the other characters aren't really described what they look like either. So it just felt odd. So it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I wanted to point that out because I haven't seen anyone point that out. But that aside, the actual plot of the book is where it really shines. Like I said, it gives you a lot to think about. I found it engaging, and I constantly wanted to know what was going on, what was going to happen. I did find it a little bit far-fetched because I don't know if I believe that such drastic changes would happen within 10 years. And I also don't know if I would believe nearly all women who have been socialized the way we have been socialized in this patriarchal society would suddenly all rise up in such a way that they would immediately enforce the violence that they've endured for all their lives on random men. Like, I think that certain things, like certain groups of people doing that, makes sense, but I don't think it would happen in 10 years. The book is also told in kind of an interesting way. This story is basically told as a fictional story from the future. Like, this is supposed to be historical fiction from the very, very far into the future where society is a matriarchy, and the person who wrote the story is like coming up with a way that society became the way it did. Like I said, and I keep repeating, the book does give you a lot to think about, gave me a lot to think about on my vacation on the beach. and I would recommend it for that alone. Like I said, it was a very engaging read. I do recommend you be in a good headspace when you're reading it because it does go into pretty dark places. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. You know what this book is? Marie Kondo is now world famous. She has a whole TV show. In addition to this book, she has another book, actually. You know what this is about. It's Marie Kondo's famed way of tidying up. I gave this 3.5 stars. If you are not a fan of the more frou-frou, as I like to say, or like fruity, I don't know, there's no good way to describe this, side of self-help, then I don't know if this is the book for you. When people talk about things like spiritualness and stuff like that in self-help, that's what I mean when I say like frou-frou or fruity. Marie Kondo does tell you to talk to your objects and thank them and imagines lives for them. So if you're any kind of skeptic, keep that in mind. As for me, I am towards the skeptic side, but I can like let it go just to enjoy a book and like take what I need out of it. But I'm not sure reading this book was super necessary just because Marie Kondo's style of tidying up and everything is so pervasive and everyone knows it by now. I feel like if you watch anyone's YouTube videos where they're decluttering, you kind of get the idea of it if you want to do it on your own. The book doesn't go into much more detail. It just kind of gives a little bit more of Marie Kondo's life and how she like came up with the method. But if you're just strictly interested in the method, you could probably read the Wikipedia article and be fine. If you're really into the whole idea of the KonMari method, then reading it can't hurt, and it was like a pretty good book. But otherwise, I think you'll be fine without it. Again But Better by Christine Riccio. This follows a girl named Shane who's 20 years old, so I assume she's in her junior year of college. I don't remember. But she feels like she's been doing college all wrong, so when she sees a chance to go and study abroad, she decides to jump on it, and she wants to use it as an opportunity to reinvent herself and turn her college career around. I gave this 3 stars, and I received an e-arc from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, so thank you to the publisher. This has been a big topic on BookTube, but I don't know, I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. The execution of the book was lacking for me. I saw the twist coming a mile away. It's literally the title of the book. I don't know if it's a spoiler, but like I said, it's literally the title. Even though I saw the twist coming, I thought it was an interesting element that I haven't seen done too many times before. However, all other aspects of the book just weren't that great in my opinion. The writing was okay, but there were a lot of descriptions that just felt unnecessary and too long, and descriptions that I would have liked to have that are just kind of skipped over. I feel like a lot of people have mentioned this, but Shane goes on a lot of trips around Europe because she's studying abroad in London. I don't think I mentioned that in the synopsis, but yeah, she went on a lot of trips around Europe, and we don't get as many descriptions of that as I would like, but we get a lot of descriptions of like her outfit of the day and stuff like that, and it's not a vlog, so I don't care. This book also seemed to suffer from that thing where like, you remember that Tumblr post where people were like, here are all the words you can use instead of said? Like that's what happened in this book. Like the author just seemed to like avoid saying said and using as many synonyms as possible for it, and it was kind of distracting, and once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. So I just ruined the book for everybody. You're welcome. As for the characters and plot, I just found them both to be kind of cringy. A lot of the things that happened I think were supposed to come off as cute and quirky, but they just came off as trying too hard. There were characters named Babe and Pilot, which are not the greatest names for characters, I think, or just for your children in general. Please don't name your child Babe. I feel bad saying I wasn't a huge fan of Shane's character because you can really see a lot of Christine in Shane, and I don't want that to be like a judgment of the book because I'm sure that other authors, especially with their first books, will put themselves in their characters, but we just don't know because we don't know the authors, and we do have the backstory of, we know Christine, we know her vlogs and everything. We've seen a lot of things about her personality. So it just feels awkward reading it, but I don't want to fault the book for that because of what I just explained. But all of Shane's interactions with other characters felt awkward. I was really not a fan of her romance with the love interest. It felt, first of all, really one-sided, and there was like emotional cheating going along with it, which I wasn't a huge fan of. I thought we had moved past the Anna and the French kiss days, but I guess we have not. And since this is a rom-com, the romance pretty much took up the whole book. There was a small sliver portion where towards the end of the book, Christine was not focused on romance, and she was like focusing on her internship and her other friends and everything like that, and I thought that was the best part of the book. If the whole book had been like about that, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. So it does give me hope that Christine's next book I will really enjoy, because there was a part of the book that I really did like, but within the context of this book, it was definitely not enough to save it. I wasn't a fan of the ending either, and yeah, so in the end, it was an okay book. It wasn't horrible or anything, but it wasn't good either. Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. This is the third book in the Crazy Rich Asians series, so I cannot really tell you anything about it. The first book follows Nick and Rachel. Rachel is Nick's girlfriend, and Nick has a family of Crazy Rich Asians in Singapore, and Rachel goes with him to meet them for a summer in the first book. I gave this book 3.5 stars. The thing I really love about the series is the over-the-top plot and characters, and everything about that is just so fun to read. This book and the series as a whole has a bunch of characters that you'll love to hate, and some that you'll just really enjoy reading about. While I did really enjoy the large cast of characters in the series, it just felt like it might have been too expansive. If we had cut out a few characters, we might have been able to go into more detail of some other characters, because as the series progressed, some characters felt like they just kind of got left behind. If you love over-the-top drama, then this is a series for you. I just had such an enjoyable time getting into the nitty-gritty of the problems of the insanely rich. Four Dead Queens by Astrid Scholte. This follows Carolee, who looks harmless, but she's actually one of Kadara's most skilled thieves and liars. And then there's Varen, who is an honest, upstanding citizen of Kadara's most enlightened region, Ionia. And then somehow Varen and Carolee cross paths when Carolee tries to steal a package from him, and then somehow that all leads to them getting entangled into a plot that leaves all four queens of Kadara dead. So in this world, country, Kadara, the country is split up into 4 quadrants. One of them is Ionia, like I mentioned, and the other 3 don't matter, but each one has like a specialization. Like in Ionia's is like intelligence kind of, and like skilled workers and stuff. One of them is art, one of them is like farming and stuff, and like one of them is trade maybe, I don't remember. But yeah, and then so each quadrant has a queen, and then all the queens rule together. And in the story, like I mentioned, somehow the queens all end up dead. I talked about this book a lot in my reading vlog last month, so I will link that down below and in the corner. If you're interested in like more detailed reading of it, then you should check out that vlog. I gave this book 2.5 stars. This was easily the worst book I read this month. I was intrigued by the mystery presented. I wanted to know who killed the queens, why the queens were killed. Well, you kind of know why the queens were killed because they're queens, but you want to know like what was the specific person's motive. I was also intrigued by the fact that this was a standalone fantasy, because I love standalone books and you don't often find standalone fantasies. But unfortunately, this was a big letdown. I thought the whole presentation of the story felt super off and led to the book feeling very repetitive. The queens are actually given their own perspectives within the story, but because you go into them knowing that they die, then it feels jarring to have their perspectives at all, and they continue throughout the story. The way the story is told and the timeline is really interesting and odd. You don't realize until the end what's going on, but I didn't like feeling confused for so long. I felt like the world building was lackluster, and speaking of the repetitiveness of the story, each chapter begins with a rule from Queenly Law or Queenly Lore. I couldn't really quite hear what the audiobook narrator was saying, but one of those. But there seemed to be only like 5 or 6 laws or rules, so they just kept repeating them over and over as the chapters go on. It's not each chapter, but like a good amount of the chapters. And since we already know the laws, I don't know why we kept repeating them. And it was repeated to the point of irritation. And I felt like if they were gonna do that, it would have been a good opportunity to extend the world building and give us more of the laws or something, or other facts about the world or something, anything. But as it was just annoying. The characters all felt one-dimensional and off-putting. Like I said, the queens have their own perspectives within the story, so you do get to know them a little bit, but it makes it very hard to care for them when you go into the book knowing that they're going to die and expecting them to die soon. I did not care for them at all. 2 of the queens are women who love women. They're in a relationship with each other, but they both die. It's not a spoiler, it's the title, literally the title. So that does lead to the bury your gaze trope, just putting that out there. The main character, Carolee, was so dumb all the time. She did things that made absolutely no sense. She gets betrayed in the story, like towards the beginning, and she's so trusting. It was a very harmful betrayal, apparently. It didn't feel like the book appreciated the gravity, even though the plot did, if that makes sense. Like Carolee didn't appreciate the gravity, and then even though she was just betrayed by someone very close to her, she literally latches on to the next guy who comes. That makes no sense. She's supposed to be this badass thief, and she literally falls for the next guy she sees. And the romance wasn't even good. It was not good. It was not entertaining. The love interest was boring. There was no reason for them to be together, and it was not good. Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee. This is set in a future where superpowers, superheroes, and supervillains are commonplace. We follow Jessica Tran, whose parents are the local superheroes, but she herself doesn't have any powers. And as she's struggling with not feeling special within her family, she decides to get an internship, and this internship happens to be with the local supervillains and also her parents' sworn enemies. To make matters even more complicated, the other person at this internship is Abby, her longtime crush, and we follow her day-to-day life as she's working for the villains and she's uncovering a plot that is bigger than heroes or villains alike. I gave this book 4 stars. I unexpectedly loved this. I thought it might end up being too campy for me, but it didn't really feel that way at all. It was a little bit campy, especially towards like the middle end, but it was enjoyable all the same. The romance in this book has brought me newfound hope in YA romances. Like I just said, with Four Dead Queens, the romance was terrible in there, but this romance was cute and made sense. The characters were so cute together, and I loved watching the crushes and their relationship blossom. Jessica, the main character, is a mixed Vietnamese Chinese American girl who's also bisexual, so it was really interesting to watch her deal with her identities and deal with all her feelings of feeling like a disappointment to her parents, feeling like a disappointment to herself, dealing with her mixed heritage and how she fits in with the culture she's a part of, as well as her relationship with her friends who I loved, and additionally, like more in depth of her relationship with her parents and her siblings. I did think the plot was kind of predictable, but it kind of went with the fun feel of the book. Like I don't think the author expects you not to know what's going on, so I felt like it was part of its charm and I just really enjoyed reading it. I guessed almost all the twists and turns, but I had a fun time reading it all the same, and I'm super excited to read the next book in the series, which I think is called Not Your Villain and follows Jessica's friend who is a trans boy, which sounds like it's going to be really good. American Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang. This is a graphic novel which has 3 loosely connected stories. One that follows Jin Wang, who transfers to a new school where he becomes the only Chinese American kid in his class. And we also see the Chinese fable of the Monkey King retold to us in like this animation style. And I don't know the original story, so I don't know what's changed and what's not. And lastly, we follow Danny, who is the popular kid at school, whose life gets ruined every time his cousin Chin Ki, who's the ultimate Chinese stereotype, comes to visit. I gave this book 3 stars. Unfortunately, this book was not for me. Mostly while reading it, I was really confused on what was going on because, like I said, there were 3 stories and it was not a very long book. It was a lot to flesh out. I think there's a good message about accepting yourself in there, but I felt like it was wrongly conflated with the idea of accepting your station in life. That was just my interpretation of it. I'm not Chinese. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the fable or anything, but it was just how I read it, and yeah, it was just not for me. You Are a Badass: How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. This is basically what the title says. It's a self-help book on how you can live a better life. I gave this 3.5 stars. Overall, I don't have a lot to say about this. It was a fun read, but Sincero's ideas about attaining a higher vibration and stuff to get what you want felt a little too frou-frou for me, and the other stuff in here wasn't all that groundbreaking, but it was a fun read. And she talks like a lot about manifestation and stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of. And the last book I have to talk to you guys about is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is set in Paris, 1889, in a world similar to ours, except some people can control either mind or matter. We follow Severin, who's a treasure hunter and a hotelier, after he's approached with an offer to find a specific artifact, and in return he gets something that he's been wanting for his whole life, so he can't refuse. We follow him and his band of misfits as they try and find this missing artifact. I received this arc from the publisher in exchange for an honest review, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This book was super hard to get into, to be honest. The first 100 or so pages especially are so description heavy. It was really hard for me to wrap my brain around what was going on because I literally couldn't understand. I just felt like I didn't even know what was going on half the time. But once I got used to the writing, and I think the book just got less description heavy because I guess the author felt like she had less to introduce to the story, it was easier to read and I got more into the story, but I still never felt like I had a true grasp on what was going on, what the magic system was, like everything that was going on. The main draw of this book is the diversity within the main group of characters we follow. I want to say 6 perspectives, but I honestly don't remember. I'm sorry. And there were multiple people of color within these perspectives. Severin, who I mentioned in the synopsis, is Algerian. Another character who's like not quite in their friendship is half black. One of the characters is Filipino. One is from India, and one is Jewish. And I think the Jewish character is supposed to be coded as being on the autism spectrum. And so I really appreciated that, and I really appreciated that the author was trying to like explore these characters and their experiences within this time period, because a lot of times when we get historical fiction and stuff, we ignore the fact that people of color existed, or if they did exist, then we don't really appreciate how they might have been treated. So I really enjoyed the book for that. However, it felt really shallow because the characters felt shallow. They didn't feel fully fleshed out. I did not enjoy their group dynamic. I couldn't understand why they were friends in the first place. We don't really get a whole lot of their backstories and stuff, or like what drew them together. And so I found it really unbelievable that they would be friends, because I didn't see how they got together. And I felt like that was the main draw of the book. In addition to the heist and the overall plot were interesting, but a bit confusing, because like I said, I wasn't sure what was going on for a lot of the time. There were like little puzzles in the book that were used to like solve problems and stuff, and I thought that was fun. They kind of reminded me of something like Indiana Jones, maybe, like something like that. And like, I used to read a lot of like mystery-ish books where you like had to solve like a word problem or something, and so it reminds me of that. So I thought that was fun, but overall I wasn't a huge fan, and I thought the ending was very cheap. I did not like it, so I don't know if I'll be reading the second one. So those are all the books that I read in May. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any opinions about any of the books that I mentioned, please be sure to leave a comment down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I post a video. I try and post videos every Sunday, and so check back here on Sundays. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.